Yeah, welcome to the program, Mr. Dershowitz, and welcome from Boston. Tell me, what is your immediate reaction to the situation now in the Mideast, the burning of the embassy in relation to these infamous cartoons?
Well, it's great hypocrisy on the part of those doing the burning, because these are some of the same people who read voraciously much worse cartoons directed against Christians and Jews and Americans and Israel. Deeply, deeply offensive anti-Semitic and anti-Christian cartoons are a staple out of Gaza every week. And suddenly, when Mohammed is offended, they're prepared to burn down embassies and create this kind of havoc. It is extraordinary hypocrisy.
But then the U.S. State Department just recently said that to encourage to religious and ethnic hatred in this way it has been done by the Danish newspaper is not acceptable. I gather you do not agree with this stance.
No, I do agree with the United States, because they're saying that no religious hatred, no incitement should be encouraged. That would mean no anti-Muslim, no anti-Jewish, no anti-Christian. That's fine. If you have a circle of symmetry in which everything is equally permissible or everything is equally impermissible, that is fair. But radical Islamic leaders are saying it's perfectly okay to insult Judaism, to insult Christianity, to have cartoons which have stereotypes of Jews with long noses and killing babies and using their blood. That's perfectly okay. Just don't insult our prophet. We can insult your prophet, don't insult our prophet. That's what Islamic fundamentalists are saying. That's not what the United States is saying. The United States is saying don't insult any religious leaders.
But you've told me that you would want the medias in the U.S. to publish these cartoons, but why?
Because they do publish other cartoons. That is, the policy in the United States has been when there are offensive cartoons. For example, a cartoon a couple of years ago appeared in La Stampa, which is a leading Italian newspaper, which had an Israeli tank. I have it here in front of me. You probably can't see it. It has an Israeli tank, and it's shooting the baby Jesus. And the cartoon says, "Surely they don't want to kill me again." Or another one that won the Cartoon of the Year award, which has Ariel Sharon, big fat Ariel Sharon, eating a baby. And it says on the bottom, what's wrong? You've never seen a politician kissing babies before? The United States publishes those offensive cartoons because they're newsworthy. You can't have a story about a cartoon without seeing the cartoon. In fact, when you see the cartoons published by the Danish newspapers, they are mild in comparison with what's published every day in Islamic fundamentalist newspapers and in Syrian newspapers, in Egyptian newspapers, in Saudi Arabian newspapers. So you have to see the cartoon to get a sense of how outrageous these attacks on the Danish embassy and this hypocrisy is throughout the Middle East.
So what is the reason for the U.S. not to publish these drawings? Because this goes for all the medias.
Well, it's not a law. Any newspaper can publish the cartoon. I was informed yesterday that Time magazine is seriously considering publishing the cartoons. That would take an act of courage. CNN has shown no courage. It claims it won't publish the cartoons because they're offensive, but they have published previous cartoons that are offensive. The fact is they're frightened. The fact is that this kind of religious and intellectual terrorism is working. It is persuading journalists who would otherwise cover this story with the cartoons to back away, not on ideological reasons or not for reasons of protecting or preserving integrity or anything of that kind, but out of physical and economic fear. This is economic, physical terrorism directed at journalists, and it's working. They have succeeded in the United States. They have failed in parts of Europe, but they have succeeded in the United States.
But there could be another reason for it, and that is that your multi-ethnic culture respects minorities, and because of that does not show the drawings. Couldn't that be the reason?
Absolutely not, because they do show drawings. For example, an American newspaper would not publish a cartoon like the ones I told you about in La Stampa or the one that won the European press. They are deeply offensive, they're anti-Semitic, and they're outrageous. They would never publish a cartoon like that in the United States out of choice. But if it was published in Europe and became controversial, then they would publish the cartoon as part of a news story. and they are selectively not publishing only cartoons that offend Muslims, while they do publish cartoons that offend Christians and Jews, purely because they know that Muslims will react violently, whereas Jews and Christians will not react violently. They may complain, they may protest, but they're not going to burn down embassies. And so when the burning down of embassies and the fear of fatwas and physical and economic retaliation are what determines the policy, it means that the terrorists have won. And the United States and other European countries have a policy: never give in to terrorism. Well, they are now giving in to terrorism by not publishing these cartoons, not because they're offensive. They publish plenty of offensive cartoons, because they are frightened and because they lack the courage to confront this kind of terrorist threat.
All right, let me just touch on another issue, because the American Samuel Huntington, as you very well know, he wrote 10 years ago the book about Clash of Civilizations, and had this thesis that in the future wars would be fought along fault lines, wars would be fought between different religions, different cultures. Do you think that this development shows that he was right at the time?
I think it does show that there is certainly a plausible argument that this is more than just an argument about the morality or the sensitivity of showing cartoons. It is a clash between different cultures, and it's a clash that's being played out internationally, and it's a clash that's increasingly being played out domestically in countries like Denmark and Holland and France, and it will come to the United States, although it has not yet come to the United States. We haven't seen this kind of violent reaction by American Muslims in the United States. It's much more of a European problem and a Middle Eastern problem than an American problem, which is surprising because America is seen as the devil and the villain internationally, but domestically, Muslim Americans are very good citizens and generally have not engaged in violence of this kind.
But how do you explain that, the difference between the U.S. and Europe?
I think the United States is a country of immigrants. There is no kind of established group, and so everybody's a minority in America. Everybody is an immigrant or a grandson of an immigrant. And I think in America, the chances of becoming integrated into the society and living a full life as an American, whether you're of Muslim background or any other background, is something that has been proved over the years. And so I think many of our minority citizens have a stake in the country, a greater stake than in some parts of Europe.
But does your attitude basically mean that these conflicts in Europe are unavoidable, and that the Danish government in that sense really can't do too much about it?
I think the Danish government is doing the right thing by saying we will not censor our newspapers. Newspapers should make their own decisions. Were I an editor of a newspaper, I probably would not have run these cartoons. They are offensive, but I think so are many of the cartoons that are run against Christians and Jews deeply offensive. If a newspaper is going to have that policy, it has to say no cartoons that are offensive to religion or no cartoons that are offensive to ethnic groups. But it cannot, under any circumstances, say we will have a different standard for Muslims than we will have for Jews and Christians. That is unacceptable, and that is exactly what seems to be going on in some parts of the world.
Thank you very much, Mr. Dershowitz, for joining us here in Copenhagen.
Thank you. Thank you very much.